I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Nashua Board of Education organizational meeting, Monday, January 7th, 2019. It is now 7:02 p.m. We're at the NHS North Boardroom. I will read the roll.
Got the phone on? Mosier on the phone? Yes,
Yes,
I
Chris
called.
Mosher's on the phone.
Hear it, sorry.
Okay, okay. All right, Mrs. Oden,
Here.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Here.
Mr. Mosher,
I'm here.
Ms. Hohensee,
Here.
Mr. Kaufman. Here. Mr. Garino is here. Ms. Raymond,
Here.
Ms. Timmons,
Here.
Ms. Porter.
Here.
Also joining us for the first time are our two representatives from our two high schools. We have Ms. Jamila Scales.
Jamila Ashanti Scales.
I'm sorry, Jamila Ashanti Scales, and George Eid.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us,
Thanks for having us.
and,
Thank
and
you.
welcome. Okay. On our agenda, we have for tonight, the business before the board is nominations for president and election of president for 2019, nominations for clerk for 2019 and election. We're going to establish a roll call order. And also, we have committee assignments, but those won't be finalized until our president is chosen. So first, the first business before the board is to open nominations for president. Mrs. Oden?
I'd like to nominate Ms. Heather Raymond for president.
I second it.
You don't have to
Okay.
second a nomination.
Okay. Just in case.
Ms. Raymond, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, thank you. I'm quite
Okay.
flattered to accept it.
Are there any other nominations? No other nominations? Okay. In that case. I guess there could be a discussion. If you want to say something, sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a couple of questions because it'll impact the way I vote. Thank you. Ms. Raymond, back on December 10th, you made a statement where you said that the public has a right to know, where you said, excuse me, Mrs. Oden, it's come to my attention that adding new business at the meeting violates the right to know law. The public has the right to know 48 hours in advance what we are going to be discussing so that they have an opportunity to prepare and respond. That was on page 18 of the minutes. I need assurance that as president, you'll abide by the latest revision of policy EDB, which says, and I'm taking 3 non-successive sentences, every board member has the right to place items on the agenda under new business, and items not included on the agenda may be brought up under new business by any board member. And the third one is that the name of the board member making an agenda request shall be included on the agenda with the request. And then after you reply, I do have one other question. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. I'm glad you brought this up. After that meeting, Ms. Van Twyver was kind enough to look up the portion of the right to know law regarding that, and she shared it with me. And if you recall, I sent you an email. I copied you on an email thanking Mrs. Van Twyver for providing me that information. So I was mistaken during that meeting, and if that had been brought to my attention, like if I had known that at the time, I would have withdrawn my objection. Knowing that now, I would not object again in the future. My goal is always to follow the law. Having said that, I do encourage all board members to submit their agenda items before the Tuesday before the meeting so that it's on the agenda so that we all have a chance to prepare. I know for myself personally, I like to know what's coming up so that I can, think about it, research if I want to, and when things are brought up at the last minute at 9:30 at night, it's difficult for me to think on my feet and respond in an intelligent way. So I would encourage everyone to try and follow, the spirit of the agenda, which is to let people know in advance.
I have another second question.
Go ahead, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. And Ms. Ray, I happen to agree with you on that. That was always my primary intent, was to get things on the agenda. That didn't always happen. My second question is, as president, how will you handle requests for information from the board? Will they be addressed promptly and voted on by the board, or will they be placed on the, quote, list of deferred requests?
Well, I guess it depends on the nature of the request for information. Does that make sense? So for me, there is a hierarchy of priorities. Items that are time sensitive or that require immediate action ought to be acted upon first. Items that are regarding a pet project perhaps don't need to be at the top of the queue. It's my goal when setting agendas to keep them within our 2-hour time frame whenever possible. So my hope is that we don't have, 18 new business items or 18 requests for information on one agenda. But board members need information in order to do our due diligence. And I think I have been very clear about that over the last year, that we have an obligation to do due diligence in overseeing the district. Now, do I think we should second guess every single thing? No. And I also don't want to be micromanaging. We hire good people to do their jobs. But absolutely, there are things that board members need to know in order to do our jobs effectively. And I would not, I certainly wouldn't put up barriers to people getting information that they need.
So is that a decision the board is going to make, or is it going to be done by the superintendent as it was last year?
I guess it depends on what the request for information is. I think we had decided last year to try and funnel things through the board so that staff wasn't getting overwhelmed. I'm open to revisiting this, but again, we have to let people do their jobs, and I can't get information without going through Dr. Mosley. So we still have to request through him.
Right. My concern is that the superintendent was making arbitrary decisions by placing them on the list that the board never took action on. And I want to know if you're going to continue that practice or not.
My expectation is that I'll be meeting with Dr. Mosley fairly regularly to discuss agenda items and anything else that is needed. And certainly, board member requests would be part of those conversations.
So are you saying that all board member requests have to go through you?
No, what I'm saying is we have a queue. I'm happy to follow up on those things.
Thank you.
Are there any other nominations right now before the board? We have nominations. Are there any other nominations before the board? Ms. Oden?
I move to close nominations.
Okay. On the motion to close nominations, Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Sure, yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Okay, nominations for president are closed. We have one person, Ms. Raymond. Before we vote, I just want to give Ms. Raymond a chance to say a few words if she'd like, or
No, for the sake of efficiency, I think we can go ahead and people can make their choice known if they wish to.
okay, thank you. All right, so we have one person nominated for president of the board. Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Yes, okay, in favor of Ms.
Timmons.
Ms. Raymond, okay. Yes is in favor. Mrs. Oden?
Miss Raymond?
Ms. Raymond. Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes, I'll vote for myself.
Okay. Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Okay, we have 9 yeses. Ms. Raymond will be our president of the Board of Education for the year 2019. Thank you. Congratulations. Second part of business is nominations for clerk. I'd like to open nominations. Ms. Porter?
I'd like to nominate Ray Guarino for the position of clerk.
And I second that.
Okay. Are there any other nominations?
Go ahead.
Ms. Hohensie?
I'd like to nominate Elizabeth Van Twyver.
I'll second.
You don't have to have a second.
Okay. So, Ms. Van Twyver, you accept nomination?
Certainly do.
Okay, and I do also. Okay, so we have two people nominated for clerk. Are there any other nominations? Mrs. Oden?
Move to close nominations.
And second that.
Okay. On the motion to close nominations, Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes?
Mr. Guarino votes yes, Ms. Porter.
Yes.
Okay. Nominations are closed. We have two people, myself and Ms. Van Twyver. So I'm going to give Ms. Van Twyver, if she wants a chance to speak, because that's what we did at our last organizational meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Guarino. I would look forward to serving as clerk for the last year of my tenure here. I have had great experience in being the clerk, because I was the clerk under Mr. Farrington, and I have quite a good knowledge of parliamentary procedure, and I know what the job entails, and I would appreciate your vote for me, because things have not gone too well last year, and I think that I can bring some sanity to the position of clerk.
Thank you. I just want to say that over the past year, it has been a privilege to serve as clerk, and I want to thank all the board members who supported me as clerk. I have done what I have filled in. I have shown up and filled in where we needed people to come and fill in spots when we had places that were left not filled. And I've done my job, and I think I've done a pretty good job. Others disagree, but that's life. So with that, I'm going to take the vote, if everybody is ready for the vote. So either say Guarino or Van Twyver for a vote for either.
Can I make a comment?
Sure, Mr. Mosher, go ahead.
We have two very good candidates for clerk. And clerking in our group is very, very important. And I appreciate so much Mrs. Van Twyver for her diligence and her knowledge of the workings of the board and the people. I also appreciate Mr. Guarino for his service this past year, and the fact that he has apparently grown quite a bit into the position. And as a longtime member of the board, I find it difficult to choose actually between the two, because I know that either one will serve quite well. And so I appreciate the fact that they are both running, and as such, I am going to abstain from this voting because I am kind of torn between the two of them, and I hesitate to make up my mind because I realize the experience Mr. Van Twyver has, and also the fact that Mr. Guarino has grown into the position. So I abstain from this vote because of the fact that both of them, I feel, are very qualified and ready to serve in the position. Again, like Mrs. Van Twyver, my term is ending in the same time as hers. So,
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0 at 8:35. We are in non-public.
All right, thank you, Mr. Guarino. Let's take a brief recess. So Okay, we are back in public session at 9:01 PM. And we have finished our discussions of the food service contract, and I am prepared to entertain a motion at this time. Mr. Kaufman.
Move to approve the food service contract for a time period of 2018 to 2021 with revision to the third step column on Appendix A3.
Second.
Ms. Hohensee has seconded. Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. When you're ready for the roll, Mr. Guarino? Ms. Hohensee.
On the motion to approve the food service contract, Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes, thank you, food service people.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Porter,
Yes.
motion carries 9-0.
Congratulations. Excellent. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. Before we go on to the next thing, I had a couple of things. We have some leftovers with Mr. Clausen, and I don't know if we need to go back into non-public about them because we've talked about them publicly previously, the MOUs for the two contracts, and I just want to know when we're going to get that. If we need to go into non-public, that's fine.
Mr. Guarino, I'd like to hear from Mr. Clausen if he feels this is a non-public issue. Mr. Clausen?
It probably is a non-public issue, but I was going to schedule through Tara another non-public to talk about another matter. Could we roll all these into one?
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, I mean, there's another contract that is going to a fact-finding process, and I want to talk to you folks about that. So maybe we'll do it all with that.
And it's a non-meeting, not a non-public?
Yes,
It can
non,
be either one. I mean, it's non-meeting,
With
whatever's, non-meeting is probably the easiest thing to do.
okay. So, thank you, Mr. Clausen.
So,
Mr. Kaufman to finish, and
since-
then Mr.
thank you.
Guarino.
So since we're going to be here tomorrow night doing some committee stuff, which may not take very long,
I hope not.
is it possible Mr. Clausen's calendar, I mean, we can knock it all out, piggyback some meetings to be a little more efficient.
Yes, Mr. Clausen, we agreed to meet at 7 PM tomorrow to discuss committee assignments. I believe we had some conflicts with earlier than 7, so unfortunately.
So the earliest that I could be here would be 8 o'clock, but I'm willing to get here at 8 o'clock if that works.
Are y'all willing to hang around?
I would be fine with that personally.
Mr.
Do we need a full hour for the committee assignments, or can we meet at 7:30?
I sincerely hope we don't need a full hour for the committee assignments. Would 7:30 not work for anyone?
I can't be here at 7. Oh, I'm
Oh, I
sorry.
meant
For
for the
the other-
committee assignments. I'm sorry, Mr. Clausen. Ms. Hohensee?
No, that's what he just said, that he couldn't make it before 8 o'clock.
No, she's asking about our committee assignments, beginning at 7:30 instead of 7.
Oh, fine. Better.
Okay, great. Mr. Guarino, I'm sorry. Thank you for your patience.
That's okay. Thank you, Madam President. I move to seal the non-public minutes at 9:04 PM.
Oh. I'll second.
May I ask a I just want to say, I'd just like to make a comment.
Ms. Hohensee?
I don't see why we need to. I think we have a practice of sealing everything. I don't think there's anything in there that if we left it unsealed would be of any real consequence after we make the vote.
Good. Well, I suggest we vote and see what
Yes.
the will of the board is.
Correct.
On the motion to seal the minutes, Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes?
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
okay, Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
okay, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
No?
Okay. Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-1.
Okay. All right. So just to clarify, we will be meeting at 7:30 tomorrow here for our discussion of committee assignments, which hopefully will be not contentious, and then at 8 p.m. for a non-meeting with council. Yes? Okay. Moving on, the only other item I have on our agenda is board member comments. So,
Point of order, did we vote on the contract yet? Or was that just the
I know I
motion?
made a motion.
oh, you were correct. You
Yeah.
made a motion, and then we got off topic with
And
talking
we
about
sealed the minutes.
Mr. Clausen
out of-
coming back.
Out of order. And
We voted.
voted?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. we
Motion
did.
carried 9-0.
Oh, good.
My
That's
goodness,
fine.
we're just so efficient tonight. It's going right through. Okay, excellent. So, board member comments. Ms. Van Twyver.
Yes, Madam President, congratulations to you and Mr. Guarino for your election. I hope that this will pave the way to a smoother year this year. I'd like to remind the board that we still have not received the SAS test scores that were given out on the test in March. That was supposed to be on the curriculum meeting and it didn't happen. The other thing is that curriculum committee meeting also had 3 topics that I hope that will be continued next year. That's the sign language, the cursive, thank you, jeez, and the play for kindergarten. Those 3 topics were not attended to, and I think that they should be put back on the curriculum meeting. Another point I'd like to make is that I have been told that since the end of the year, education is not what it should be in this district, that a lot of time is frivolous away, that there's been movies and trips and whatever, that they're not getting quality education, and I'd just like to bring that up. The other thing, too, is that we voted on O'Keefe. I attended the symphony the other night. It was a sellout. We had the Beatles music there. It was fantastic. But unfortunately, the air quality in that place was terrible. I froze, and the people upstairs almost died of the heat. So I would like to see, we've been talking about improving the conditions in the O'Keefe for many years, and I think it's about time that something that gets done. And I hope that somebody, one of the representatives to the JSSB will bring this up and kind of figure out a way that we could get that place fixed up for them. They've been very good to us. They do things for the 3rd graders teaching, and they've been very, very good partners with us. So I would hope that somebody would take the time to see if somehow they need bathrooms. I mean, that's pretty serious. And also the air quality. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Van Twyver. Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. Ms. Scales here came back, so I had wanted to say something to both student representatives, but I guess you're going to only hear it live. I just wanted to wish you well in your both your endeavors here at the board. I want to encourage you to learn more about what we do. It's not just a board meeting. The committees, as Mr. Dowd suggested, is kind of where I'll just say the grunt work really happens about being on a board. And I would encourage you, if obviously your studies are primary, but if you have some time, you want to involve yourself occasionally, maybe visit each committee once, something to give you a more well-rounded view of what a board does. If you really want to understand an organization, you follow the money. But if you have a student proposal, perhaps you'll pick up where I forgot Haley's last name, where she left off with the grade, the class rank. Maybe you bring that to policy and you walk that through. That would be quite the experience. It will be unique. So there's a lot going on. Anything I can do anytime, feel free to ask.
Thank you very much.
And just one last congratulations, Ms. Raymond. Good luck. Try and help wherever I can.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Ms. Hohensee.
Thank you. Again, welcome to our new leadership, our president and our clerk, and to our two board members. I think it'll be an interesting, hopefully a good year. I also like to echo Mrs. Van Twyver's concerns about the auditorium at in Elm Street, the O'Keefe Auditorium. I think there's some confusion about whether we're renovating or building anew, so that's been backburnered, but maybe either the school board or the city will come to terms with the fact that if we're going to use this long-term, some type of plan ought to be put in place, but it is a difficult one because it's, there's a lot of decisions being made.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hohensee. Ms. Timmons.
Oh, thank you, Madam President. Congratulations. Congratulations, Mr. Carino, and you, Jamila Shante. I do have one announcement, and it's because we're going to have a Martin Luther King breakfast on January the 21st, 2019, and our junior guest speaker is Jamila Ashanti Scales. So if you all would like a ticket, I have them on hand right now, but it is January 21st, 2019. It's the Martin Luther King annual 35th breakfast.
Thank you, Ms. Timmons. Ms. Oden.
Congratulations to your leadership. I'm very glad to see you there. So, and you too, Mr. Carino.
Thank you, Mrs. Oden. Ms. Porter.
Just wish everyone a happy new year.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. Mr. Guarino.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to congratulate you. I think we're going to have a great year, and I think the board made a very good decision electing you president, and I want to thank people on the board for supporting me for clerk, and a very big thank you for Mrs. Oden for all her hard work in 2018. I think this board accomplished a lot. This board was functional in 2018, despite what people say. A lot was accomplished, and I think we owe her a great debt of, we owe her a big thank you. She put in a lot of hard work and a lot of times, and I learned a lot from Mrs. Oden, and it was a pleasure and a privilege to serve as clerk when you were president, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Guarino. I will be very brief. Thank you, everybody. Oh, Mr. Mosier, I am so sorry. Mr. Mosier, did you have comments?
Yes, I do, and thank you for keeping me in mind. I know that
I'll get there.
The physical absence from the building, but at least the electronics has proven to be helpful and keeping everybody apprised of what's going on. Yes, I'd like to say also, a Happy New Year to all. That I appreciate you all, each and every one, and I'm very appreciative to the hard work and the tears that Mrs. Oden has spent in her frustrations with the board and the various people that have been there and have had some kind of thoughts about the agendas and about the workings of the board. But all in all, I say that the board has a lot to learn in going forward. I think that our alderman, who has given us the benefit of his wisdom and his experience in being an alderman and his time on the board, has been helpful. And we should all listen very carefully to what he said, because he is absolutely correct. And he, like me, we are both aging out in our endeavors with the city and with the different boards that we serve on. And I know myself that being on the Board of Ed for 12 years has meant a lot, not only to myself, not only to the city, but also to the other members that can take benefit from some of the things that I have learned and some of the wisdom that I may have passed on. But I look forward to the rest of the year and for the conclusion of our service on the board, and know that we're leaving it at the end of the year in good hands with a lot of intelligent people who will be able to carry forward and produce the results that we expect, and then in educating our children. I know I have my two daughters that were very happy with their education, and Maine does.
Yes. Part of what I believe, if I can just get this really quick, I actually was anticipating something else. Oh, yeah. This is an annual, I got it, of course, yeah. This is, it is a annual, it's an annual appointment of four individuals that can, what I would say, man the commission. And so it's Ian Atwell, the music teacher, Sean Smith, and there is a longtime member of, I believe it's Dennis Schneider. And so this is, again, a perfunctory request where every 4 years that they have to make the request to have this commission for the Elm Street Auditorium. So I can't make the formal appointment. It has to go to the board. It's 4 members. It's typically the principal, the music teacher, the director of plant ops, and a member of the commission. So, for instance, if Mr. Atwell or Sean Smith or even Julia Oliver Babb leaves, then we'd have to probably nominate someone else. So again, it's just a commission that allows, it's a 3-year term for these individuals.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Mosley. I'm looking for a motion to approve the reappointment of those 4 members to the Edmund Keefe Auditorium Commission.
So moved.
Second?
It looks like it was seconded by Ms. Oden silently,
Okay. Mrs. Oden, second? Okay.
based on the waving of the hand. Is that correct? Yeah. Thank you. I do have one question, unless someone else had a question first. No? I assume these people they're willing to continue their terms?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Maybe Ian, we told Ian he's doing it.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Guarino, for the roll.
Okay. On the motion to approve the reappointment of 4 members to the Edmund Keefe Auditorium Commission 2018 to 2021. Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Uh-huh.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Guarino. The next item on the new business part of the agenda is a request to accept a grant for the SNHU Celtics Tech Lab grant at Fairgrounds Elementary. It looks like this came from you, Dr. McKinney. Would you like to speak to it?
This is an amazing opportunity for Fairgrounds Elementary School to have a STEM tech lab put into their elementary school, complete with Chromebooks, new furniture, and video production, where they're hoping to both film their morning announcements as well as do some movie production after school. I'm asking for your approval for the opportunity for this group to come in, and they do all the hands-on work of setting up and basically walk away by the end of this month with a new STEM space for the students at Fairgrounds. So I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Dr. McKinney. I'm looking for a motion to accept the Southern New Hampshire University and Boston Celtics Technology Lab grant for Fairgrounds Elementary.
So move.
Second.
Ms. Van Twyver?
How much is the grant for?
That is an excellent question.
I always have excellent questions.
Dr. McKinney?
It's actually not listed there. They just come in and do all the work. So they did a similar program at Manchester School District. It's not approved for a dollar amount. They just basically come in and do an extreme makeover of the space and basically walk in one day and set it all up from the furniture to all of that. So Mr. Harrington over at Fairgrounds has already talked to technology to make sure of compatibility. He's worked with the faculty in terms of making the space available, and the Gen Yes student leadership team to be available to create that space. So there's not an exact dollar amount. I could reach back to them and try to find out, but it's an amazing opportunity to walk away with a tremendous amount of resources that were not here today, but will be here by the end of the month.
Anyone else have a question or a comment? Nope. I have a couple of questions. My first question is regarding budgetary concerns. The grant sets it up. Do we have any kind of projected costs for us to be able to maintain this over time? Anyone?
So again, I know that Mr. Harrington's been in contact with technology, so everything that's being set up and being installed and going forward would be handled by technology. He didn't indicate to me that there would be any exorbitant cost. Everything that's coming in is resources that we currently use, like our Chromebooks, like some of the furniture wouldn't be a deal. And then for the green screen and the technology for movie production and film production, we have similar resources like those throughout the district.
Okay, and I see Mr. Fahrenkopf has left. Okay, and then the other question I have is how did Fairgrounds Elementary School, what was the criteria by which they were chosen? Like, I saw their application and I thought it was lovely, but I'm just curious about the grant program in general. Is it something that, was advertised, that a lot of people, there was a competition for? Did they just find out about it? How do we?
I don't have all the hidden details in terms of the selection process. I knew they were finalists, Mr. Harrington let us know, but in terms of more details of how they were selected or the application criteria, I'd have to reach back out to Mr. Harrington and bring it forward.
Okay, I just would be curious because I think, I'm just curious. I think it's wonderful that we have staff that reach out and try and do these kinds of things. So, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you, Ms. Raymond. I share your curiosity about the maintenance costs of these things. If there's future licenses that we have to buy or there's upgrades, and machines have a life of just a couple of years. So to replace and maintain this lab, even 3 or 5 years from now, will become a baseline expense that we will have to assume. I'm curious about the Generation Yes. If I remember, and probably a year or two ago, we approved something in the elementary schools. It was to train the students to support, I'll just call it the school and the staff in the school. Mr. Donovan, you nodded your head. Am I sort of remembering that correctly? But there was going to be a recurring fee with that after some period of time. So are we incurring any expenses with Gen Yes if they're involved with this program?
Yes, Dr. McKinney.
Yes, Gen Yes is charged to the Title I grant, and that cost has been being reduced over time because we've been invested in the program and we kind of have gotten to a sustainability program. We do pay for training of teachers, a teacher stipend, and some training for students annually every summer. But there are kind of our student troubleshooters. They teach other kids in terms of facilitating kind of basic issues that happen with the Chromebooks, and they assume a leadership role in the buildings.
That's very cool. All right, thank you. Mrs. Oden.
Thank you. I have a question. It says on the cover page that the STEM lab has to be complete by January 24th. That's only a little over 2 weeks away. Who has set that date, and what happens if it's not met?
The awardees of the grant, so SNU and the Boston Celtics, are the ones who set that date, and they're on a timeline, so they're coming to us, and they're probably moving on to other facilities. So every indication I've gotten from Fairgrounds is that they're ready to go. They're just looking for our approval, and then reaching back out to the Celtics for them to come and present. So I'm happy to join you there and take some pictures with the Celtics on opening day. But I know they did a similar thing in Manchester, but we're kind of at their mercy, if you will, on their timeline. So that's why I asked for this to be put on the agenda for today.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. I 100% want to go and be there when the Celtics are there for the cutting of the ribbon. All right. Mr. Guarino, can you call the roll?
Yes. On the motion to accept the SNHU and Boston Celtics Technology Lab grant at Fairgrounds Elementary, Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes, Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Porter,
Yes.
motion carries 9-0.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Guarino. The next item is our request that we accept grant awards from the Nashua Education Foundation from the fall of 2018, which were in the amount of $11,600.19. There's a list of the grants in the packet. So I'm looking for a motion to accept those.
So move.
Second.
Discussion?
Did it get a second?
Yeah, Ms. Porter.
I think they should be verbal.
No, she said it out
Oh,
loud.
I didn't hear her, I'm sorry. Well, Dottie did the same thing. Huh?
I heard you.
She did say Sorry. it.
I called Dottie out on the carpet when she waved at me.
I
Did everyone
recognize
hear
your
that?
voice.
Okay, Mr. Kaufman.
Yeah, I do want to just thank the National Education Foundation, I believe that's the teachers union, and also the Celtics and all the other folks who are doing the gardening, helping us with all these grants. So may not say it as much as we should, but the extended community is really trying to help us, and we want to thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Okay, Mr. Guarino, when you're ready.
On the motion to accept the grant awards from the Nashua Education Foundation for a total of $11,619, $11,600.19. Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes, Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Porter,
Yes.
motion carries 9-0.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Guarino. I would like to ask that we take the rest of the agenda out of order. It looks like our next item is a request to approve the food service contract, and I believe we would need a non-public to have some discussions in case we have any questions. So I'd like to take things out of order and skip ahead to the public comments, and then go back to the food service. Mr. Kaufman.
Would you want to also do the board member comments?
Sure.
I mean, I don't know, because if we're non-public, well, I guess Jimmy would have to wait if they're going to come out with a vote, so.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, he's stuck, so.
Yeah, he's stuck. We'll have to come back, so. But I certainly wouldn't want people to miss out on public comments if they get tired of waiting for us in non-public. Do we need a? Yes, please.
Move to suspend the rules and hear public comment next.
Second.
Thank you.
Are you ready for the vote, Madam President, to
Yeah. Yes,
suspend the
please.
rules? On the motion to suspend the rules and take public comments and board comments,
It was just public comments, I believe.
or just public comments?
Yes, yes,
Okay. Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes, Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Porter,
Yes.
motion carries 9-0.
Excellent. So do we have any other public comments on any topic, not simply the items on the agenda? Mr. Marcoux, nothing else? Okay, with that, then I'm looking for a motion to go into non-public to discuss the contract.
So moved.
It's RSA 91A32E.
Second,
Seconded.
I did.
Dottie.
Okay,
Are you ready for the vote, Madam President?
yes.
On the motion to go into non-public, 91A32E. Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mrs. Raymond? Ms.
Yes.
Raymond? Yep. Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Comment.
Yes, please, Mr. Mosher.
You know, I'm listening to this very carefully on the process that goes between the Department of Education and DCYF and everything, and I agree that what we have to do is take this back to policy and make a comparison as to what the standards are and the definitions of what are put forward by our state and the federal government as far as our policy is concerned, because it's very easy to make a mistake in this and then have to review the policy later on and make corrections. So I think that we are in the right track in looking at these things and doing a review of all of these things before we put the policy out, so that we are all on the same page, and that everything that we are putting forward to our administrators is accurate and concise. So I think that we have to take another look at this and see that we're all on the same page, all in agreement, and put it forward as a policy. Because once you have a policy out there, it becomes very difficult later on to change it or amend it, and it leads to a lot of confusion. So we're on the right track, I think, to put it back and review it in policy in the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mosher. Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you, Ms. Raymond. So if I recall what you said as now former committee chair of policy, that the DCYF did actually look at this and felt that it was adequate for currently. And to Ms. Timmons' point that there may be some more integration that needs to happen, I kind of like Ms. Hohensy's idea. I think considering the other one is hopelessly out of date and not current with law, if I heard you say that correctly, I think the committee, I know you spent a lot of time working on this. I think that should be acknowledged. I would vote to move this forward and then at the same time send it back to committee for revision. Because I think we should have something that we know is acceptable in place, knowing it has a limitation, and we can address that quickly. My concern is if you send it back to committee now, it will probably be a month or two before we see it again. So we have a window where we are definitely not compliant, where I think this is an improvement over what we have, something we can work with, and then the committee can, because if the committee takes more than one meeting, you're going to be 2 or 3 months out, and you'll be without something that is relevant.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Did anyone else have a comment at this time? Ms. Timmons.
My statement to send it back to committee still stand. I think that once we get all the information in place at that time, then we can work at it as a whole, and the first committee meeting could be the first item for that particular chair.
Thank you, Ms. Timmons. I appreciate everybody's thoughts on this. I think I will withdraw in the hopes that the next policy person puts this on. We know that state law always supersedes our policies, so we have some protection in that if our policies have an issue, that the state law always supersedes them. So in the meantime, my hope is that people continue to call when they see a problem. And basically, the mandated reporter law says if you think maybe you should call, then you should definitely call and let the experts figure it out. So I have nothing else for policy. The other.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Van Twyver.
Yeah, are you considering JLF-R sent back too?
Yes, I was just about to say that.
Okay.
Yep.
You can do it in one motion. We haven't taken a vote yet.
Yeah, so I don't think I need a motion to withdraw. I think I can just withdraw my motion, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'd like to skip the next item, which is JLFR, because they go together.
Well, actually, Ms. Timmons made a motion, didn't she?
Very good.
Ms. Timmons make a motion, or did she just recommend a change?
She just recommended, there was just one motion on the floor.
Okay. Mr. Kaufman.
I would entertain a motion to send both these two policies back to the policy committee.
Second.
Any discussion? I think that's wise, given that we're up in the air on who's going to be in policy, so let's do that. Mr. Guarino, when you're ready.
On the motion to send the JLF and JLFR to policy, Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes, Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Porter.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 9-0.
Okay, thank you. So that's it on policy. We will put the next date for the next policy meeting on the calendar when we know. Moving on, the Committee on Curriculum and Evaluation, I don't believe they met in December. The Committee on Human Resources, Ms. Timmons.
Yes, as 2018 Human Resources Chair, we do have a personnel recommendation dated January 7, 2019, and we recommend to approve that personnel recommendation that you have in your package.
So are you moving to suspend the rules so that we can consider this tonight?
I don't think we have
We
to
don't have to
suspend
do that tonight. No?
the rules because we didn't have a human
because you didn't have
resources-
the meeting.
Right,
Yes, okay.
exactly. So I recommend that we approve personnel recommendation dated January 7, 2019.
Second.
Get your hand up.
It's been seconded.
Any discussion? Mr. Kaufman?
Two things. I'm a little puzzled about the process because it's not coming from committee because the committee did not hear or meet to discuss it, so it's not a committee recommendation. So this came directly to the board in that instance. And then once you get that resolved, I have a question about at least numbers 2 and 6 that I would like to ask Ms. O'Gara when I get a chance.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kaufman. I agree, it's unusual for it to come directly to the board. However, I think there was a timeliness issue. I don't think it's improper. Would anyone else like to comment on that? No, Mr. Kaufman?
I'm just saying procedurally, it's not a recommendation. It would be a motion from a board member to accept the personnel recommendations that were given to us. But it's not a recommendation as it would come from a committee because it didn't come from a committee.
Sure.
That's all I'm saying. I think you need a motion. I'll also move to accept the personnel recommendations as presented.
Second.
Okay.
There's already a motion on the floor to approve the personnel recommendations January 7th, 2019.
Right.
So we can only have one motion on the floor at a time.
I'm sorry, I thought I heard the word recommendation. If there is a motion out there, I apologize.
I didn't write it down, but my recollection was that she moved to approve the personnel recommendations dated January 7th. Was there an extra recommendations in there that I missed?
Maybe that's what confused me.
Okay. Ms. Van Twyver?
The entry on the agenda says recommendation to approve personnel recommendations. These were not approved by the HR committee, because I never attended the meeting or heard about it, so.
You're correct.
A motion to accept them tonight is in order. A motion.
Which is what I was trying to do.
Yeah,
I don't know if Ms. Timmons made a motion. I apologize if I missed that.
Okay. Ms. Timmons, would you mind withdrawing and restating your motion?
Okay, I'd like to withdraw my recommendation to approve personnel recommendations. We did not have a meeting in December. However, I'd like to move to approve the personnel recommendation dated January 7, 2019.
Great.
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion, or are we satisfied?
I'm satisfied.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mosier. Mr. Kaufman?
Thanks. So maybe Ms. O'Gara can give me an insight on line items number 2 and 3. I notice we're losing 2 teachers at different elementary schools. What is, and they're both leaving have already left at the end of the calendar year. What is the likelihood we're going to be able to find a continuing sub for these positions?
It's going to be difficult to fill the special ed teaching position. I believe we already have someone for the classroom position.
Are they a teacher or is it a continuing sub? Would they be a full?
Continuing sub is a teacher, is a fully certified teacher.
Right, but would they be hired for the rest of the school year?
Yes, we can hire, under the teacher contract, we have the option of hiring somebody permanently or as a continuing sub for the rest of the school year in this situation.
What happens if we don't fill the special ed? How is that dealt with in the district?
We will find someone to fill the position.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, then I think we're ready for the roll. Thank you, Mr. Carino.
On the motion to approve personnel recommendations, January 7th, 2019, Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes?
Mr. Guarino votes yes, Ms. O'Hensy,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Porter,
Yes.
motion carries 9-0.
Okay. Do we have any liaison reports? Nope. And I see that we have no unfinished business as we are starting a new calendar year. So new business. The first item on our new business is a request for approval for Dr. Mosley to sign a memorandum of understanding for off-site evacuation regarding Bicentennial and New Searles elementary schools. Dr. Mosley, did you want to speak about this?
Yes, I believe this is something that was typically signed every year in the event that there's an evacuation. Our principals and our students can go to the church, and we just need to have a yearly memorandum of understanding. I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention before signing it, and just like more of an FYI. But I don't see any problems with it. It's, God forbid we don't have to use it, but certainly we just have to make sure that we have this memorandum of understanding, which is it's just a yearly MOU.
Thank you, Dr. Mosley. Can I have a motion to approve Dr. Mosley to sign this document?
So moved.
I second.
Okay, discussion? Mr. Kaufman?
Thanks. I have a question. Why is this MOU considered confidential?
I would imagine we don't necessarily want the public to know where we evacuate our children.
Well, you just mentioned what it was.
Yeah. It happens.
Contact information.
The contact.
Oh, Ms. Hohensee, I believe you're correct. It's the contact information. See, that's what happens when I guess on the hot seat. Okay, anything further? Okay, then Mr. Guarino, if you could call the roll.
On the motion to approve Dr. Mosley to sign memorandum of understanding for off-site evacuation Bicentennial New Searles, Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yep.
Mr. Guarino votes yes, Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Porter,
Yes.
motion carries 9-0.
Thank you, Mr. Guarino. The next item is a request for board approval of the Edmund Keefe Auditorium Commission. Dr. Mosley, did you wish to speak to this?
Not going to go over every single project, but I really appreciate the work that the aldermen have done, and Mr. Smith getting together and getting these projects done. So with that, I'm going to move to approve the deferred maintenance plan and the fiscal year 2025 capital improvements plan.
Second.
Discussion? Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes, I'd like to have the amount put into the record, please. How much is this costing us?
I believe it's $380,000. Mr. Donovan can.
No.
Well, this is actually just the first step in the process. We prepare this document, we then meet with the city capital improvement plan. They review this, and then they put together a report. So we're not necessarily getting any funding for this. This is simply a request at this point in time. It's the deferred maintenance piece, and then it's the capital piece. But anything that will be purchased will go through the normal, assuming we get certain funds in the budget, we'll still go through the process of requesting those.
So we will hear from you again about this.
Yes, this is
Thank
just
you.
the plan.
Thank
That's
you.
what you're approving, the plan. You're not approving any spending.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Guarino, please call the roll.
Okay, on the motion to approve the deferred maintenance plan and the fiscal year 2025 capital improvements plan. Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Porter,
Yes.
motion carries 9-0. Our final item is a recommendation to approve a contract with Imagine Learning to purchase ELL literacy software at a cost of $42,000. The money's coming from Title III grant funding. Once again, I believe it's included in our, yes, it is, in our packet. So there's a description of the contract. There's a contract in there and a description of the software. So with that, I'm going to move to approve the contract with Imagine Learning to purchase ELL literacy software at a cost of $42,000 to come from Title III grant funding.
Second.
Any questions? Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. It says throughout the district, especially the elementary grades. So does anybody have any idea of the specifics? How these licenses will be distributed? Is the emphasis, is it 80% in the elementary schools and maybe 20% in secondary? I'm just curious how they'll be distributed. Because we have kids throughout the K through 12, right? So
Yes.
I don't know how they're probably fairly randomly, scattered, so.
I would assume it's done on a ratio, depending on how many students would use the software spread throughout. But you can have, there's 335 licenses, so it's not like you have to sit at a computer with that license. It's just.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes, I would like, this is our third year. Have we ever had a report on how well we're progressing with this piece of software? If it's doing us any good, because reading scores I don't think have gone up.
I would have to get that information from Mr. Chopa, but I did discuss with him, if he thought it was working, and he felt it did. I believe one of the things with our high ELL teacher to student ratio, this is valuable.
I'm sure it's valuable. I just want to know how valuable.
Well, maybe we can have Mr.
That would
Chopa.
be nice, thank you.
Maybe during budget, he can bring it up. Okay.
I'll look forward to it, budget.
May,
I'm sorry, Dr. Mosley.
Madam Chair, maybe this is a good opportunity for the curriculum evaluation, just to use those committees to talk about that. I think it warrants, in addition to that, also talk about, get some teachers in here who can also provide some feedback on the effectiveness of the product, as well as Mr. Chopra and Dr. McKinney can actually speak to that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Mosley. That was my thought as well, either budget or curriculum, depending on the chairs and they're setting up their agendas. So, thank you. All right, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, Mr. Guarino, can you call the roll?
Okay, on the motion to approve the contract with Imagine Learning to purchase ELL literacy software at a cost of $42,000 to come from Title III grant funding, Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes, Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Porter,
Yes.
motion carries 9-0.
Okay. Mr. Guarino, did you have anything else on finance and operations?
No, I believe that's it for now.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, moving right along. The next item on our agenda is the Committee on Policy. As I was the policy chair for last year, I will go through these items myself. The first item is that I would like to move to rescind policy 8200, the fair and equal opportunity, the fair and equal employment opportunities policy.
So moved.
Seconded by Mr. Mosher.
Thank you, Mr. Moser. To speak to this a little bit, this policy 8200 was last looked at and revised in 1987. It is not my suggestion that we rescind our fair and equal employment opportunities practice or other policies. We have a second policy, AC-R, which I've included in your packet, which is the same thing. So this one's simply redundant. Questions or comments? Okay. Dr. Mosley?
I think, it's not, I don't want a elaborate discussion. I just want to make note that for some of our policies, particularly around the child abuse policy, that we do have a new code of conduct for our teachers here that the state has imposed. And so the question really becomes, how do these two policies intersect, where there's a due diligence to report on the part of the educator as well as who is responsible for it. So at some point, it might resurface during the policy discussion with the new policy coming on board. And I think that the challenge that I would say that as administrators and certainly as teachers, it's just that how does these two policies intersect so that we're following the expectations of DCYF as well as our policies that the state has in terms of this code of ethics and code of conduct for our new teachers. So it's just a FYI, and we'll certainly have more discussion in the policy subcommittees.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Mosley. And I think that sounds fair. As the new policy chair comes on, I'm sure that they will want to take a look at that new law and see how it intersects with our policies and if anything else needs to be adjusted. Mr. Guarino, are you ready to call the roll?
Sure. On the motion to rescind policy 8200, fair and equal employment opportunities, Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes, Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Porter,
Yes.
motion carries 9-0.
Okay. Thank you. Next, I would like to move that we approve the changes as noted in your packet to policy JLF, child abuse and neglect.
Second? Oh, second.
Oh, I'd like to speak on this, Madam President.
We can't speak unless there is a second.
I
so-
just seconded.
Oh, you did? Okay,
Yes.
excellent.
Okay, at this particular time, I think we need to send this back to committee, and so we can look into it further. I feel that we don't have enough information to approve it right now.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Timmons. Ms. Van Twyver?
May I ask the previous speaker what information is missing?
Yes, Ms. Van Twyver, I think that we should have this, the federal government guidelines as well as the state guidelines in front of us so we can see if it match what the federal guidelines is regarding child abuse and neglect, and I don't see it here. I just see this is from the state reference, and I would like to have more information on it.
Thank you, Ms. Timmons. I can answer that. There is there are a number of federal laws regarding child abuse and mistreatment, but they're regarding typically foster care, and they provide guidance towards states on how to administer their programs. There is no federal law on mandated reporting. Each state maintains their own standards and rules for who and when to report, and each state maintains their own standards on what specifically constitutes abuse and neglect. And that's why when you cross the border to Massachusetts, there are very different laws about who and when to report and what their Division for Children, Youth, and Families will do than there are here in New Hampshire. When I moved here from New York, I was stunned at the differences between the two states. So further, one moment, please, Ms. O'Gara. Further, I would let you know that when we were at this committee, we had a presentation at length from a supervisor at DCYF who came and gave us quite a bit of information about how mandated reporting works. She signed off on this policy and that she said that it would meet the state requirements for mandated reporting. So, Ms. O'Gara.
This policy is meant for the Nashua School District, and it does accurately reflect DCYF, but it doesn't include the pieces from the New Hampshire Department of Education. There's duty to report from the New Hampshire Department of Education, which takes it one step further. For example, their expectation, not only in regulations, but also in the conduct and the ethics that they just wrote, includes that the principal has to know about the DCYF report, and that principal has to report it to the superintendent, and the superintendent has a duty to report to the Department of Ed. Also, I don't know if you know or not, but every other year I go around to all the schools and I do what is called a POPS presentation, where I present all the policies. And the feedback that I've been getting, so I've been going through the DCYF and the state reporting, but I'm getting a lot of questions on what the abuse looks like and how can we tell it's abuse, what are the types of neglect and abuse. And further in the RSA on child abuse, the RSA C
169C.
Say 30, or it's whatever. There's other sections that define what what neglect looks like. It could be abandonment, it could be physical, it can be emotional. And I think that we need to talk about whether those pieces belong in the policy as well.
Okay. Ms. Van Twyver.
I'd like to ask if the Department of Education has put out an advisory on this, or have they done any changes to the standard education rules?
They have put out our technical advisory for superintendents.
Then I would think that needs to go back to policy and have them updated.
Yep, I'm happy to send it back to policy. My only concern on doing that is that our current child abuse and neglect policy is policy 4400, and it is not in compliance with state law. So whomever decides to be chair of policy, I would ask that they put this on as a timely matter that should be considered. I would also ask that Ms. O'Gara attend that session. The second item I would like to say, I'm sorry, Ms. Hohensee, I'll get right to you. The second item is I very much encourage you, Ms. O'Gara, to reach out to DCYF as they have a very thorough mandated reporter training, the PowerPoint of which the supervisor provided for us, which will answer all of those questions that teachers might have about what is it? What does it look like? What do I do when I see it? And so it makes sense to me that we should have the experts providing that expert information to our staff. Ms. Hohensee.
Thank you. Just as a way of compromise, would it be possible to pass the changes you've made? They're significant, but maybe incomplete, and then send it back to policy to be augmented further. So we maintain what we've done and then continue with the work. If there's nothing wrong with what's in front of us, that's all. It might be a compromise.
And make decisions on things that come before the board, not to get into the day-to-day operations of the school system. You have a very capable superintendent and a very capable staff, and they can run the school district. If they have something that you disagree with, then you can have discussions with the superintendent, but I wouldn't suggest that the Board of Education be directing the superintendent on day-to-day activities of the school department. So as you go forward, I would hope that you would not do that. So I just want to hope that this coming year that there's a lot more congeniality at these full board meetings. They're televised, and people in Nashua are coming to the alderman and saying, what's wrong with the Board of Education? I would hope that would never happen. So I'm asking that if you're going to have discussions on things that are very detailed, please try to have them in the committee meetings. And as you'll notice on the full Board of Aldermen meetings, they run very smoothly. Something comes up, we take a vote, and unless it's a very expensive item or a very controversial item, there's not a lot of discussion. So it's because it's been fully vetted at the committee meetings. And on the Board of Ed, just like the Board of Aldermen, any member can go to any committee meeting, even if you're not on the committee, and you can speak to the subject. But only the committee members can vote. So when the committee assignments go out, keep that in mind. So again, just want to wish the board very well going forward in this year. And I hope that it's a very fruitful and prosperous new year for the full board. And as you know, as I said, I watch all the meetings, and if there's anything I can do, please let me know. And also, as the chair of the Joint Special School Building Committee, we'll be giving you periodic reports coming on the middle school project. And that's quite a long process. The first year is going to be making a decision on whether to renovate or build a new school. The second year, we'll be doing the detailed plans for the school. These are just basic timeframes. And then once they've gone through all the public input on the design, we'll finalize the design, and that's when you start putting shovels to dirt. So it's a very complex process. I was involved in the building of these two high schools, and I can tell you it's a lot of work. So thank you very much, and good luck.
Thank you, Alderman Dowd. Was there anyone else who wished to speak? Mr. Marcoux.
Adam Marcoux, 4 Jalori Lane. I'm president of the Nashua Teachers Union. I bring tidings of Happy New Year from the union to all of you. Welcome back. Congratulations, Ms. Raymond and Mr. Garino. I bring good news from the food service unit. They ratified their contract this afternoon unanimously. So we bring it forward to you tonight in hopes of a similar outcome, and then we can send it over to Mr. Dowd and his friends at City Hall for expedient passage. I know the secretary's contract isn't on the agenda, but I'm going to wiggle my way in right now and just to thank Mr. Donovan, Ms. O'Gara, and the people that work in their departments. The original timeline for the secretary's raises and retro was the end of this week and next week, and I don't know who to give complete credit to, so Mr. Donovan and Ms. O'Gara can arm wrestle for it later. The secretaries had their raises on January 3rd, and they'll have their retro pay on Thursday, and their longevity the following week. Mrs. Oden and I signed that contract on December 20th. Into January 3rd, there were 7 business days with the holidays and vacation, and so I just want to express my appreciation to the folks that made that happen. It was an excellent thing to be able to share with most people. And we look forward to a successful school board year. It's weird that you reset in the middle of our school year and all that. So, and just Mr. Dowd asked if there was anything that he could do, we should let him know. Like 7 or 8%, Mr. Dowd? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marcoux. Was there anyone else who wished to speak on the agenda? All right. Seeing no one, we're moving on to the superintendent's comments. Dr. Mosley.
Hi, I just wanted to echo the sentiments I shared as I walked in. I just want to say Happy New Year to everyone. I wanted to welcome our student reps. We're glad to have you here. We're hoping that, and I'm looking forward to getting your feedback in terms of how we can improve. And I've always said I work and we serve you first. So thank you so much. There isn't too much to report out, only because we are coming back from break. So we just had 3 days last week of school, and you know, when you come back to break, you always think of next year. So next year will be 2 days and so on, what have you. There's one thing I wanted to kind of put in our radar for all of you out there. We're still continuing on with strategic planning. This month is what we would consider the survey launch. We're going to launch a survey. Dawn Miller, our data specialist, who is, you know, she's been to a couple of our board meetings, and she's done some great work around the survey. Once she unfortunately had a death in the family. Her mom passed, and so she's been out for about 5 days or so, but she's coming back tomorrow from Florida, and we're certainly going to move forward with making an announcement in terms of getting the survey out this month. For the entire community and city of Nashua, so please keep that in your radar. We have a number of exciting professional developments coming up that will focus on current initiatives we have going on, as well as some leadership opportunities as well. So I will have much, much more to report out when we start to kind of get back in gear. In terms of when we left off literally last year, you know, there was a lot of nice concerts, and I hope some of the board members had an opportunity to go to some of them. We had some sporting events that took place over the break. I know there was a battle of the bridges. I believe it was in UNH. Was it UNH? I'm looking at you guys.
Not sure.
Okay. So I believe South won that one. You know, there are people that continue to do great things in our districts. I'm not going to do any justice to our winter sports teams. I will just say that Lisa Gingras is there on every day of the week, and twice literally on Sunday. She was there on Sunday with our kids, and I just, you know, there are people that, you know, we're home on Sunday, we're with our families, and, you know, your kids are out. My kid in particular is out, you know, UNH and sometimes Dartmouth, just participating in track and other events here going on. in both our high schools. They just never sleep, and we have coaches and teachers and student athletes that are continuing to participate and to do some great things and represent our school responsibly. So I want to thank all of those coaches, and particularly Lisa Gingras, for all her work 7 days a week, even though we were on break. So I want to welcome everyone back. Halftime is over, and I'm excited to move forward with the continuation of the school year. So that's all I have to report back.
Thank you, Dr. Mosley. Do we have any board members' response to Dr. Mosley's comments? Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you, Ms. Raymond. Dr. Mosley, I'm curious if you've been able to reschedule the focus group on the strategic plan with the aldermen.
No.
Okay. Do you have any idea when do you hope to get that done by?
As soon as we can. We'll try to work out a schedule. I'll work with Mr. Dowd or whoever is the liaison and try to get that rescheduled.
Thank you.
So we can facilitate that.
Anyone else? Ms. Oden?
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to welcome our student members, Jamila Ashante Scales and George Eid, and I'm guessing you are following in your brother's footsteps. Dodie?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Time goes by fast. What year is he in college now?
He's a junior.
Oh, my.
We're both juniors.
College?
Well, welcome to both of you.
Yep. Thank you.
I know, but what college?
Harvard. Is he at Harvard?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
All right, anybody else? All right, seeing none. Moving on to the new student members of the board comments. We always invite our student members to speak at this time on our agenda. Did either of you have something that you wanted to share this evening? Ms. Scales.
No, I don't have anything in particular, but I will say that I'm here for our student body at... I'm here to represent our student body here at NHSN, as he is here to represent his student body at NHSS. And I promise that I will do the best I can at relaying my school's opinions on the topics that the topics that are important to them at NHSN and things that affect my school, things that we decide here that affect the schools, and the schools on the north side, I guess, of New Hampshire, Nashua. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Scales. Mr. Eid?
I just want to say that I hope to do the same, and I'm thankful for the privilege to work with the board, and I'm looking forward to the year and to learning a lot from the group. Thank you.
Thank you. We're very excited to have you both. Oh, Ms. Scales?
And thank you for having me here tonight.
Thank you. All right, Committee on Budget. We don't have a new budget, but it'll be coming up soon, next month, I imagine. So hopefully the next meeting we'll have someone assigned. The Committee on Finance and Operations. Go ahead, Mr. Guarino.
Thank you, Madam President. As committee chair for 2018, I will report on, we have 3 items from the Committee on Finance and Operations. The first one is the expansion of the garden, the greenhouse expansion and the Titan Garden at NHS North. That includes adding new raised beds, and the funding is going to be provided by Regenerative Roots Association. In the packet, there is a description of the project and a little bit of shows a layout and a little bit about the Regenerative Roots Association. With that, I move to recommend to approve the improvements to the greenhouse and expansion of Titan Garden at NHS North, including new raised beds and shed, funding to be provided by Regenerative Roots Association.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Right, well, then I'll say something. I just wanted to thank the Regenerative Roots Association. This is a wonderful project. I saw it on Facebook, and I was really impressed with all the pictures and all the hard work that all of our students are putting into this. Cool. When you're ready.
Okay, you're ready for the roll call?
Yes, please.
On the motion, Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0. Our second item is our deferred maintenance plan, capital improvements program. Mr. Smith had come to our committee, and as he does every year, he puts together a deferred maintenance plan, and he has been in touch with the aldermen about funding this, and I believe it's for $380,000. And there's a list in the packet. I'm not.
I feel that it's relevant for me to express my opinions and to abstain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosher. Okay, so Ms. Van Twyver, your vote would be Van Twyver, I assume.
Well, aren't you going to take a roll call like we usually do?
Oh, I'm sorry. I've got the wrong list. I apologize. Mrs. Oden, you're next.
Mr. Guarino.
They changed the list on me. I apologize.
Excuse me, but Mr. Mosher was making a comment. He wasn't asked to vote.
Okay,
right?
Mrs. Oden, you said Guarino?
Guarino.
Okay. Mr. Kaufman?
Ms. Van Twyver.
Okay. Ms. Raymond?
I agree with Mr. Mosher on all of his points, but I'm going to go with Mr. Guarino.
Okay. Ms. Timmons?
Mr. Guarino.
Ms. Hohensie?
Van Twyver.
Now, Ms. Van Twyver, I'm sorry. I had a different list here, two different lists. Go ahead.
I don't understand why you have two different lists, but I vote for myself, thank you.
Okay. And thank you. I will vote for myself. And Ms. Porter?
Mr. Guarino?
Okay. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes for Guarino, 1, 2, 3 for Van Twyver, and 1 abstention. So Guarino wins clerk for 2019. Okay. So that's our second item on the list. I'm sorry. Fourth item on the list. Okay. So the fifth item is to establish the roll call order. And I believe we have something in our packet that's going to help us choose that. Okay. So, Mrs. Oden, what number did you
I'm number 1.
Okay. All right. Mr. Kaufman, what number? Okay. Ms. Raymond? 2. Okay. Ms. Timmons?
8.
Ms. Hohensie?
7.
Ms. Van Twyver?
I have the lucky number 5, halfway through the voting order.
Okay. I drew number 6. And Ms. Porter?
9.
And Mr. Mosher, you get number 4.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we are almost done with our business here. We have one more piece of business on the agenda, which is the committee assignments. Those are going to be chosen by our new president, I believe, and then we vote on it. So the only thing I can say is that make sure everyone has one of these sheets to fill out. Does everyone have one of these sheets? Yep. Okay, and we can, next meeting, we can pass them into the new president.
No, just give them now.
Or you can give them now, doesn't matter.
Right.
Mr. Donovan, do you want to collect these? Do you mind?
Yeah, these are our lucky numbers here. We use them every year.
Okay.
Mr. Guarino, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Regarding people's availability for a special meeting to come back and vote on committee assignments. Are people comfortable waiting until next week, or do we feel that it's important to get it done this week? Because my availability is tomorrow, and then I have basketball and Girl Scouts on Wednesday and Thursday. So I'll call on you, Mr. Kaufman.
I think it would be helpful to get it done sooner than later, only because then you can make the committee, the schedule, you can schedule your meetings.
Yep, I agree. Do people have availability to meet again tomorrow evening?
Can we do it at 7?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, yeah, I guess.
When did you say, tomorrow?
Hope so.
Yep.
Okay,
If everyone has that availability.
I'm available.
I usually need more notice to some caretaker now, so
Okay.
I'll try. I can't tell you offhand that quickly.
Alternatively, Thursday?
Thursday's worse, I'll try for tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank,
Can I have them?
yep. Where did I put them? Right here. Okay, so I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. On the motion to adjourn, let me see. Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mrs. Oden? Yes. Mr. Kaufman? Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons? Yes. Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Greeno votes yes. Ms. Porter?
Yes.
The meeting is adjourned at 7:24 PM. Thank you all.
All right. Good evening. It is 7:26 PM, and we are here in the boardroom at Nashua North, and I am calling the Board of Education meeting to order. Oh, it's Monday, January 7th, 2019. Mr. Guarino, could you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Oden?
Here.
Ms. Raymond?
Here.
Mr. Kaufman?
Here.
Mr. Mosher?
I'm here.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Present.
Mr. Guarino is here. Ms. Hohensie?
Here.
Ms. Timmons?
Here.
Ms. Porter?
Here.
Ms. Ashanti? Jamila Ashanti? Scales. Here. And Mr. George Eid?
Here.
Thank you. Also present tonight, we have Dr. Mosley, Dr. McKinney, Ms. Fitzpatrick, Mr. Donovan, and Ms. O'Gara. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Guarino. Could you please lead us in the prayer? And if Ms. Scales could lead us in the pledge after the prayer, I'd appreciate it.
Please stand. Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty of managing the educational institutions of our beloved city. In our common endeavors, may we find a spirit of unity and understanding which will enable us to face our multiple problems with an objective mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will be for the betterment and greater happiness of all of our fellow citizens. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag as the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And after putting you on the spot, I'd like to formally welcome our new student Board of Education representatives from the Nashua High School North, Miss Jamila Ashante Scales, and from Nashua High School South, Mr. George Eid. Okay, we'll get it right. Welcome. And you're both juniors?
Yes.
Yes. Well, excellent. I look forward to hearing from you both this year.
Thank you. We look forward to working with all of you as well.
Thank you. Okay. The next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. Are there any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda? Okay. Seeing none, can we please have a vote on accept? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Oden?
No, motion to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Oden.
Second.
I second that motion.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mosier. Ms. Van Twyver had gotten it.
No, it wasn't me.
Oh, it wasn't you.
Ms. Hohensee.
Oh, it was Ms. Hohensee. I apologize.
That's okay.
Okay. Any discussion? All right. Seeing none, roll call.
On the motion to accept the consent agenda, Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mrs. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond? Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
The motion carries 9-0.
Thank you, Mr. Guarino. So moving right ahead, are there any communications outside of the consent agenda? Okay. Seeing none. The next item is public question and comment period, limited to items on this agenda. Did we have anyone sign up for public comments this evening? Okay, Mr. Dowd.
Hi, my name's Alderman Rick Dowd. I'm the liaison from the Board of Aldermen to the Board of Education. And I had just a couple comments as you start your new year. First, I want to congratulate Mrs. Oden for a year of being president. Having been president of the Board of Education, it's a daunting task. And congratulate Mrs. Raymond for her new position. And Mr. Guarino for his past service and his current service. So, my comments will be from me, from my 16 years in association with the Board of Education, and not from the Board of Aldermen. First of all, one of the things I'd like to talk to is meetings. Even as far back as when I was on the Board of Education, the Board of Education has too many meetings. On the Board of Aldermen, we have sort of come up with, if we have a very light agenda for a meeting, and there's nothing that's urgent, we push it off to the next meeting, committee meeting. And as far as the full board meetings, I think in my experience, because I watch them all at home, a lot of times we have conflicting nights as the Board of Aldermen meet quite frequently as well. But I think the board meetings tend to go far too long. And there are a number of reasons they shouldn't. First of all, most everything should be discussed, as it is on the Board of Aldermen, in committee meetings. On the Board of Aldermen, people can come forth with a piece of legislation, a resolution, or an ordinance. It's on the agenda for the main meeting, and then the president assigns it to a committee. And the majority of the discussion is done at the committee. If there's something that needs to be brought forth to the full board, then it can be brought forth. But if the committee recommends that it doesn't come back to the full board, then it sort of drops off the agenda. Data requests. I get a copy of packages, just like you do for everything on the Board of Ed. And I've come to find that a lot of the data requests are pretty extensive. And we always felt, when I was on the board, that data requests to the school office put them doing work that isn't related directly to the day-to-day running of the school. So I would suggest that you be very careful of the degree of data you're asking for and why you're asking for it. And I would also suggest that those requests come out of a committee rather than individuals, because no one on the Board of Education, just like no one on the Board of Aldermen, makes decisions for that board. Only the board makes decisions for the board, and that's why you take votes. So I would be careful with that. The other is, and I'm not suggesting you do, but the one thing to be very careful of is micromanaging the school system. The Board of Ed is here to pass policies and
Elm Street and wherever else they have been. And they are very successful now in whatever they're doing. And they can look back and they can remember the teachers and the principals and some of the benefits that we had when things were tight with our former administrator there in Maine Dunstable, who was very helpful in our, getting everything together and keeping the children there and getting them educated. It's very important. So all in all, I can say that when I leave from service in the board, that a lot of people are going to be there. They're going to be looking forward to the new challenges that are going to be facing us. And I know it's in good hands. So keep up the good work, guys. Happy New Year. And don't mind me if I belt some fire and smoke once in a while, but it's necessary. I bid you all a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. I just wanted to thank everybody for their confidence in me. This is a big role to fill, especially thank you to Mrs. Oden. I think I have big shoes to fill, and it seems like a kind of a thankless job, but hopefully we can move forward, and I will do my best to learn on my feet and make sure that I'm being fair and giving everybody their chance to contribute. The other very quick thing I wanted to say is I wanted to encourage people to go onto the Arlington Street Community Center's website. I recently learned that they're doing adult swing classes next week, and they have some other adult dance classes that they're going to be offering. So I won't be there. I have 2 left feet, but for people in the community who are interested in getting out and doing something fun for adults, it's an interesting thing to do. Does anyone else have anything else before we adjourn? No? Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Did you get who and who?
It was Mr. Mosher. Mr. Mosher?
Mr. Mosier?
Yep,
And who seconded?
I did.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, on the motion to adjourn, Mrs. Oden?
Yeah.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver? Yep. Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
We are adjourned at 9:20.
Thank you.